Good afternoon. I'm Kate Reese, and I'm the owner of Reese Law. So, of course, we have a disclaimer. Please note that the material in this podcast is not offered as legal advice. It's informational purposes only, not just for me, but for my guest. I welcome you to Family Matters with Reese Law. We are a family law firm based in Fairfax and serve the Northern Virginia area and Southern Maryland. In episode 22 of our podcast, we will be talking with Phyllis Palombi, marriage and family therapist with an MS in clinical mental health counseling. And today we're going to be discussing summer schedule considerations for children who live in two homes, and also special occasions like Father's Day and graduation. Hi, Phyllis. Thank you for being our guest today and sharing your knowledge on children's summer schedules. And thank you for joining Family Law Matters.
Kate, thank you for having me here. This is a very important topic, one close to, I think, both of our hearts, because you've certainly developed in your law practice the psychological skills. So it's fun to work with you because you have a great understanding of the behavioral concerns of this topic.
I've seen many cases in 25 years, and they're all a little different.
Well, absolutely. And I was just thinking, I mean, I've had the privilege of, the maturity of career that I get to see families when kids are young, they're 8 or 9, and they come back as adults and share their experiences in terms of divorce and how it's affected them. So I think that it adds another layer of information for us, to share with our clients.
I'm sure that does inform you as to what really doesn't work and what works best. So many topics on that front, and how the children deal with it now that summer is upon us. Sometimes I think the parents forget that the children are a part of the summer schedule. Other parents make the children the sole focus and don't really leave any time for anything else, like the children being at home and having time with their local friends, etc. But what should happen over the summer, Father's Day, etc., family events? What should be going on to get to a harmonious schedule?
Well, before we talk about the specifics of a schedule, I just want to kind of share impressions about how important this is developmentally for kids. Because when parents go through this conflict, and, I don't know how post-divorce the actual agreement is, but so every case is different. Also, the ages of the children are very different to, in comparison in terms of how they respond. And then the psychological aspects of each child in a family, who's attached to which parent, is anyone alienated? So all these factors are very important, and each case is unique in itself. So I think that's important. But to keep in mind that any child sensing a parent's conflict, they relive the divorce over and over and over again. So that's why I've devoted my career, and I know, Kate, you have too, to help parents be healthier in their approach and put their own history of the divorce and the responses to the divorce in perspective for the sake of a child. So how they go about doing this is really, very critical in my mind. And it's just what we do here for summer vacation is no different, like you said, Father's Day, funerals, weddings. I'm about to, it's an interesting story, actually. I've continued to see a mother and 2 of the 4 children. The children were on and off over the last 11 years of a very high profile divorce that was very, very damaging, where one parent moved to the other side of the country. And there's a wedding coming up. So we are reliving all the aspects of what they went through, and talking about how they perceived the original divorce and post. But I try to help families have a method, and get a way of dealing with a formula of how we're going to deal with these events. And that's something, Kate, that you would be great at in terms of if, you know, you would mediate the times and the events.
Mhm.
And then what I do is then I work with how difficult that is going to be, you know, for each parent in different ways.
Yes.
So I think that we can talk about Father's Day and choosing camps. And I think with Father's Day, it's almost kind of would seem like a no-brainer that a child goes with, you know, the father, the parent, on that day, just like a parent has a birthday.
Right. Sometimes the debate is, does Father's Day is it Father's Day weekend or is it just that day? And of course, we have the balancer of, okay, we're going to treat Father's Day the same way we treat Mother's Day. And then occasionally somebody will say, well, I want my vacation that week. A mom would say, I want my vacation that week. And therefore, Father's Day will have to be a different day, or you could change your schedule. Or if the father is taking it and he says, well, I get an extra day. I know the order says we get 7 days for summer vacation twice, non-consecutively. I get 8 this time because it includes Father's Day, or I get 9 because it includes the Saturday and Sunday of Father's Day. I've seen every imaginable configuration. Tell me your thoughts.
I think that if a couple can work out those days peaceably, then that's the way to go, you know, and most people are pretty able to do that. You know, if there's really becomes a high conflict topic at that point for the two of them, then, you know, there are a lot of unresolved issues still between the two of them. And
Yes.
that's where, you know, therapy at that point can help them, post divorce couples work.
Right. And I completely support post-divorce couples work because we do have strange things that happen, like mothers only going to Disney on Father's Day. So, gee, would you rather go to Disney or would you like to go hang out at your father's house? That's putting the child in a no-win situation, and I don't even think the parent realizes it. They might know they're manipulating the other parent, but they're also manipulating their child's mind, in my opinion.
Well, that's exactly, I don't think people realize, you know, when as therapists, we witness the developmental issues that occur to a child who has experienced this at age 8 and 9, and then starts going into dating relationships in college and in their 20s. And the problems that arise are amazing from remembering the conflict and who was the dominant parent and who wasn't in terms of their role, you know, what sex they are in the relationship that they have. And these patterns tend to duplicate themselves. And if parents become aware of that, and maybe they read a lot about this, and I know the literature talks about conflict, but not specific examples of what really happens developmentally to that child as they become an adult.
Mhm.
And if we could only impart how important this is, I mean, we all love our children, and what gets in the way is that the getting even with the other parent is really very detrimental, you know, to kids. And again, it depends on the ages.
Right. Sometimes parents need to be reminded, hey, that person you're talking about in a not nice way in front of your kid loves that person and loves you too. And it actually can be dangerous to the speaking parent in that example, because the child might start to feel a division that is not in favor of the person who is being negative.
Right. And of course, there are exceptions in terms of abuse and situations like that. And I think, again, if the parent who is being accused of, whether it's true or not, of abuse, can work with somebody to deal with that behavior. And again, I think it's so critical to ask children, even young children, you know, 5-year-olds, in terms of, do they want to go to Disney or do they want to play in the backyard? You know, what have they heard about camp? And really parents need to sit down and have an unbiased theater, just listening to their kids. It doesn't mean if a kid says, I want to go to ice cream camp for, that you're going to do it. But I think it's important not to lecture kids. Oh, this is what'll be good for you. Maybe that should come after, but to sit down and say, what have you heard about this camp? Or have your friends been to camp? And what do what's your feelings about going, if it's the first time, especially, what it would be like for you? And I think you mentioned something when we talked before about how do parents share the visiting time.
Right. Sometimes somebody thinks all the camp time should go on one parent's schedule, leaving them not much in the way of time with the children over the summer, under the guise of, well, we were set up to be week on, week off, and sorry, but camps just happen to fall on your time. So some thought needs to be put into how to address that. We don't want a child going without.
It's easy to be able to say to a parent, where is that feeling coming from? Is that coming from past hurts? Is that coming from a place that's fair, for the kids? What do you think, Johnny is going to feel if you're not there, or that you're there all the time? And I think it's just sensitizing parents to what a child feels is really important.
Right.
And of course, ideally, if we could get parents to share the visitation time in terms of either number of days, but then the ultimate is being there together.
Right. Right. For the graduations and other
like this wedding coming up. We're working on it now. The wedding's at the end of October. And
I just spent quite a bit of time mediating a schedule, and we decided to go ahead and do it for 3 years because there were certain bumps in the road that always came along, and positions that were taken that were the bump. And we were able to get through it. And while it may not have looked fair in year one, because we even odd some things, somebody's going to get Thanksgiving and somebody's not, etc. Over a 2-year span, they should be very comfortable with what they see and feel like they're getting time with their children to share their rituals and family beliefs. So it does take some cooperation, but if you get into mediation, usually if you can get somebody to agree to mediation, you can get to that level of cooperation. So that, I think, is very, very important. And it's not a bad thing to need help. I mean, people have different views. And they have views that make sense to them.
Well, they also get backup from perhaps grandparents, the parents of the person who's doing the dictating of schedules. And I've had grandparents come into my office to really settle their feelings about the whole divorce. And again, the healthiest thing is you've had a relationship, and for the sake of the kids, not to badmouth the other parent, as we talk about that in divorce in general, where you don't badmouth the other spouse in front of the kids. But, we need a village to raise kids. And the more people, the aunts, the grandparents who kind of buy into a healthier process, the kids do so much better, and so do the participants, because they feel better about themselves as they go forward.
Yes.
In their lives.
I've never had parents walk out of mediation when we were done unhappy.
Yes.
They are feeling satisfied that their time with the children is protected, and that it's in black and white, and we have a plan. We're going to work the plan. And trust me, they've thought of everything. They're back 3 or 4 times. Okay, are we done? Yes. Oh, one more email. But there's so much where I think it comes from the fact that parents feel, like a single parent. Both parents might feel like a single parent. And what I'm trying to encourage is sharing events, sharing information, jointly deciding about camps for the children. I mean, you want them to be focused on the child's issues. You may not want archery, or other things that are fairly hazardous. But everybody feels better when they feel like they were heard and that they had some buy-in on the decision making.
Well, I totally agree. And that includes the kids.
Yes, yes.
That's what I said before. I think it's important for both parents, and if not possible, then one parent sits down with their kids, another parent then sits down at a separate time, and this is what Johnny told me, but this is what Natalie told me, and he, to share information, because sometimes kids will, even adult kids, deciding to go to law school is to please one parent or the other. So it's between choosing camps or choosing careers. When the split of divorce happens, just have to be very careful not to encourage the separateness in choosing a parent by getting close to a parent, choosing what the parent wants. So you're encouraging the individuality of each and the needs of each parent, but you're also considering that in a child.
Yes, I think that's very important. And the children remember it. And in later years, they're like, I want to do something I want to do. I had to go swimming for, 8 years and I want to play volleyball.
Right.
For whatever reason, the parents, decided to take that route, thinking it was good for the child, of course, thinking it was good for the child. But the child didn't feel heard at all. So it was good that when he was a bit older, around 11 or so, the parents were listening, and that really worked out well. And then we were able to figure out who was going to take the child to swimming practices, and that both parents would always be at meets. And if anybody got any information that the other didn't have, they would freely share it, so that the child could look up and see both parents were there. And they don't have to sit together, but they're both in the stands, right? Is that workable enough?
Well, yes, and I developed a form that goes to the parents. Each situation is entirely unique to that family, but they have an email sharing sheet that talks about questions. Did Johnny make friends in at the basketball meet? How did he do? Was he hurt? Did he, but general for the week, where they share incidences, where we develop questions that are pertinent, and that goes back and forth. So if parents don't want to fight, or they feel they will get upset in front of the other parent, that's another way of communicating. But also to make sure that they're trying very hard in person, when everybody's present.
Right, right. And I do not have any relationship with our family wizard, but I have a lot of clients that use it and find that it's very functional. How about you? Do you have any clients that use that well?
I have had people who use it, and I support the notion of it. Again, each family is different, and it's the specifics. What I'm talking about is sharing emotional content, or I'm worried about, the stomach aches that have been occurring. And this is what I did, and I called the pediatrician on Thursday and they said to do this. I think that if a couple, most of the time they feel, instead of just having these phone calls where you don't really want to have that phone call and you're in a rush to get through it, to do it prescribed again individually. We sit down and we know each child and we make up a list, and I say to the parent, well, what concerns you about what's going to happen this week or in general? And they're just generic questions that they take home and think about it and write and then share it. It's such an easier way of doing things. Not texting, because that tends to get a little
Convoluted.
also, it's, people hide behind text, the emotions. This thing is just straightforward information.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's very, very helpful.
I like that a lot better. And I'm not a fan of the use of text in family law cases because you do lose tone and inflection. And somebody can read, and I've told more than one person, sarcasm does not work in black and white. It's very, when somebody turns around and says, "Oh, I was being sarcastic," no, it just sounded like you made a mean comment that
Right.
you didn't need to make. And that's not a good cover for it.
Right. Well, that's
So,
what's wrong with texting today with a lot of people. It's a lot of misunderstandings in
yes.
text, but also, we've seen so many families over the years. One thing I have a book outlined about cognitive dissonance in couples and how even in person you don't really understand what the other, or you misunderstood what the other, and that's not what I said, and that's not what I meant. And
Right.
when you're clear in an email communication where you're answering specific questions, it takes the emotional stuff out.
Right. Right. Just gets to the facts.
Right, exactly. Um, and you asked me some questions before about both the visiting day thing and what happens if one child doesn't want to go to camp. You were interested in that.
Right. I mean, put like a family with 3 or 4 children is not unusual. And I think parents have to get creative, but there might be one child who there's not a camp for him, or it's not the same week or the same time frame, or the child just says, I want to stay in the neighborhood and play. I don't want to do a camp. How best can parents deal with that?
I think that's almost, it's not easier, but again, it has to do with the same uh, allotment of time that you say, okay, Monday is, this is this day, your 3 friends are here, and you arrange a playground date, with those friends. And then a parent takes an activity,
Mhm.
according to if they're working or not working, but you work out a schedule where we're having lunch, we're going to go to Chuck E. Cheese, or we're going to go to a museum today. And then they split the things by asking. It depends again on the age of the kid. If it's a young child, then you have play activities outside or swimming or whatever they like to do. An older child, it becomes fun, the zoo, even a younger child likes the zoo too. But we have certainly in our area phenomenal museums and things. Or there are lakes that have boats, I mean,
Yep, there's one in Reston. Lake Anna has got, you can rent kayaks and paddle boards, and I think a few other things.
yeah,
So,
no, it's wonderful. So I think that there are, half a day trips or, parents plan to use some of their vacation time
mhm,
to be in city, because that's what we do with kids, you have 4 kids. Not every child is going to have the same wishes or
right.
needs. And so planning your year in terms of time off,
Mhm.
I want time with my kids, I need time for myself, etc. It needs to be built in the beginning of the year.
Right, right. And that is really best because then everybody can reference it and plan events they want to do on what are the weekends that they are designated to have the children, and not have that get set aside because another plan comes into play. That goes back to people keeping each other informed. I mean, if it's a wedding and you knew about it in January, it should have been on the calendar. If you didn't find out until May, okay, maybe there has to be a discussion. But certainly, let's hope not a court order to get a child to a family event such as that. Um, but people argue over different things and for different reasons. One that I've had come up is camps and then parents' vacation time with the child, and people wanting to abut them. So the child's in camp 2 weeks, no home downtime, and then 2 weeks on a trip. My suggestion was that perhaps the child should have a few days to decompress and, you know, regroup a little bit, maybe see his friends in the neighborhood. What do you think? What's the time frame, if there's any, that just range that you would recommend, if any, for there to be between mom's vacation, the camps, dad's vacation, etc.? Should they be totally back to back?
Again, I think the age of the child and the emotional health of the child takes in consideration what the child thinks they want. Um, I'm amazed. I mean, my nephew is like my nephew's child is going away for the first time for 8 weeks. It's amazing that, and this is a single child, and I'm thrilled that the parents are actually, everybody's happy about it. The kid wants to do that. And you don't hear about that so much anymore, but there are camps like that where parents are involved, but it depends. That's a long stretch.
It is a long
Something
stretch.
like that. And maybe that's the best thing for the child, depending on the parents' relationships. And if other kids, are in the same camp, of course, that makes it much easier. So I think there are so many factors taking into account the age. There are day camps and day programs for younger children. If a child can easily separate and wants to go at age, 7 and 8, to a sleepaway camp, I think 2 week stints especially are more than enough. Again, breaking it up with some creative things with each parent. But it's not that one is healthier than the other. It's where you're at as a family. If you listen to what your kids want and the two of you are in agreement, usually the kids will be in agreement with that. Everybody's been heard.
Right.
So yes, timeout, especially before school starts, to me is essential. I mean, a week, we
Right.
do that with our kids.
We usually write a week into our agreements that there's no vacations or anything, just back to standard schedule.
Right.
Or a lot of the times the parent who will have them for the first day of school gets them for the weekend before for shopping and gathering and getting the child ready to go. So it depends on the age of the child for that one, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if somebody needs to have a computer set up, one parent might be able to do that better than the other. Just,
Well,
possibly.
I have parents now who are taking the summer to go on college visits.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's pretty powerful. No, I'm taking my son to my alumni, just us, to my school. I mean, that's fine too, as long as you're not, again, prejudicing the visit by any coercion. All right. And that's something I work with parents. How do you really make a right decision for the right reasons? And you have to listen to what a kid is saying, why. My child knew what school he wanted as a sophomore. I was like, what are you talking about? And then I had to explore what the school was about. And it's a great school, but he knew as a sophomore, and we went as a junior. The college admission counselor said, he knows what he wants and he's terrific. And, that's the kind of student they want there. Stay the same you're in. So we had no angst. We didn't do any school visits other than that. And I kept on saying, let's look at other, and he had a fabulous 4 years, was great. In retrospect, we look back at these things, but when parents are struggling, especially, when they're younger parents, they have their own expectations of what should be.
They do, and I worry the most when they don't really seem to be listening to the child, and the child is swayed by the wind of whichever parent they're talking with. And I don't know if that child's needs are ever met in circumstances such as that, because they're reticent to say, I really want to go where my brother went, or I really want to go local. Some kids actually want that. And started off at a different pace. So
It's the same formula. You try to get together with the other parent and again, share what your expectations are instead of lecturing. No, I don't want him to go there. I don't like that camp, or so and so went there. But you say, this is what I talked to Bobby about. This is what he wants. What do I want? It's too far away from home. I can't visit easily.
Mhm.
And each parent share it from that perspective, what they've talked to their child about, how they feel. And again, the other parent's input is the same, and hopefully, and usually they can come to, if they're willing to get together like that, we
Right,
see families sometimes who can't, but they're healthy enough to say, I need help with this.
right, right. And working with the right professional, the professional is going to back up the fact that there is more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way for you to have time with your child and your child to go to this camp they want to go to. We generally have 10 weeks around here, so it's not limited to a box. But when somebody makes their plans in advance and then announces them, that's going to be a problem in so many cases where somebody said, oh, well, I did too, and they are this and not the same. But then in that example, they both created the problem, haven't they?
Yes, absolutely. And that's
So,
what the history is.
yes.
But I think that, we see so many different families. Kate, you do I say a regular divorce, but we're involved in collaborative divorce, and that takes a special couple who are interested in the health and longevity of relationships in the family. And
Right.
sometimes that's tough too at times, but you have a team that
Right.
really that you can call on again. I've been called on post a case because I was the mental health coach of that
Mhm.
case, and they get into, and it's just sometimes written in the agreements that if you have a bump in the road, then you're going to call your coach again or your mediator, to do this. So it's a healthy way of doing it. And then there are some people who just are okay with coming to therapy, or I think sometimes more ready at high conflict to someone like yourself who will mediate the things, and then you take a look at it and then would make a suggestion. They may not be willing. They may be willing after that to see somebody to iron out the bumps in the road.
Right. Right.
But
No,
it takes, like I said, takes a village. And,
it does.
we all don't have our aunts and uncles living around us anymore, most of us. So
No,
the,
no.
I
But
like
the
I'm referred to as the aunt,
There
rather
you
than
go.
the therapist.
Well, collaborative is a nice little family to have your domestic matters handled in, because we're the only system with a built-in mental health professional such as yourself. And we have really knowledgeable, hardworking attorneys and financial neutrals. And sometimes the coach also serves as the parenting coordinator, and sometimes we have two different people for that role. But we have resources so that the other side doesn't have to hear it coming out of your mouth. They can hear it via the neutral who's assessed the situation, and makes people feel better, makes them feel heard
I
as
think
they
it makes
are.
you
And
feel less alone.
yes, yes,
Alone.
that's the only time, because with prenuptial agreements, generally two people aren't coming into my office, one is, but collaboratives are the only time where the clients walk out together, talking nicely to each other. We're not, one's not staying back waiting for the other to clear the elevator. There's no hostility, and that's indicative of the practice of
They're
collaborative
proud of
advocacy.
themselves that they took, a higher road,
Right, right.
and that they both have a high interest in keeping the kids healthy
Yes. And
and trying to.
especially, I think especially important when you have children with special needs, because
Absolutely. We haven't
the,
even really touched that one, but
yeah,
that goes with high intensity parenting, helicopter parenting. And I hate that expression, but it's true, where the parent can't let go and they can't trust the other parent. And that's a whole segment we should do on its own.
right, right. Because some parents refuse to recognize any symptoms or problems, even if there's been diagnoses. but we still have a child that we need to take care of in the middle of all of this. And so we see that as our job in collaborative, most definitely. And even though I'm, allegedly work for the parents, I'm always very mindful of the children in my case. How old are they? What do they need? How are they feeling? How are things going at home for them? And it all goes into how they're supported by the parent in that house and how they are feeling about the process, because we might have to give them a little bit of information about it, but we don't want to give them too much. We don't want to empower them. We don't want to make them drown in the divorce process. We want them to keep their head above water at all times. So that can be a challenge at times.
We talk about the future,
Yes.
talk about
Yes.
everybody being healthier with less stress in the future, and that
Yes.
includes the kids.
Right. Right. Any overall suggestions that you would like to share that we haven't hit on yet?
I think the only one we talked about that we should do another segment on would be handicapped kids, physically and mentally, because that's really important. The kids who have difficult diagnostic labels, whether it's attention deficit or defiancy, defiant disorders. I think that takes special handling, and that's sometimes the seeds of why a divorce occurs to begin with in terms of the conflict with parents.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that, again, in each situation, I've never met a couple like any other couple.
No, neither have I. Neither
No.
have I. They're always different and unique. And a lot of times you ask them questions and they have surprising answers for you, which is refreshing. It's like, I didn't think about it in that respect. So we always have to be very open-minded.
You need to listen.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you, Phyllis. I have really enjoyed talking with you this afternoon. And if you would like to hear from us or see us, we are at www.reeselawoffice.com. And we have a podcast channel as well, so you can find us there. And with Phyllis, her office number is 703-435-7686, or you can reach her at ppalombi@verizon.net for more information. And I'm sitting basically on 123 here, and you're in the Reston area, right?
Right. I've been doing a lot of virtual. It seems to be working too, if people want to continue to do that.
It's a time saver for people,
It
and
is.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Everybody have a good summer.
Thank you. You too.